Since 1987, Les and Noel Kohn have been pioneering multicultural, multidisciplinary research into the ancient way of Chinese warrior arts and their relevant offshoots. Every day, the team works with the ancient Chinese classics, forgotten manuscripts, archaeological finds, and anything else that may offer unique insight to these esoteric traditions.
We got into historical research because we were in search of the origin of the ninja. We were trying to follow a tiny little thread that comes from the Japanese traditions, that the origins of the ninja were that of China. And we felt that various things in Japan were missing, and we wanted to know what they were, that we felt the picture was incomplete. That's the essence of how the whole thing began. So we entered the world of Chinese martial arts research, historical research, military research, cultural research. Then it became archaeology, discussions with other countries, other peoples, all to find this origin of the ninja. We did find the origin of the ninja, but then comes all kinds of questions. This type of technique used, or was this type of technique used? And so this massive investigation took place. There's no one else who's even attempted anything like this. Very unfortunately, we're in a time in history where all of these things just don't matter very much anymore. So the basic premise that we have worked upon is legends are true until we disprove them, or until the evidence shows us which path to take. Interestingly, we found that most of the so-called legends are actually very, very accurate and are largely true to the letter. I think a lot of this has to do with the Chinese cultural development and the structure of the society, but that's a whole different story. As far as recording our sources go, I think we ought to start with the fact that we did a 20-year apprenticeship with Master Guan Yun Cheng. And what that meant was that when we started, we signed an agreement that we would stay for 20 years to receive these teachings. We didn't just start training and then 20 years later he said, okay, here you go. We started knowing that we had 20 years of this going ahead of us. Anyway, Guan Sifu gave us this knowledge, but at the same time, he gave us the warrior heart record. So in our sources, we have, first of all, Guan Sifu and the knowledge that he handed down to us in a lineage of knowledge. 2, Guan Sifu gave us the historical documents attached to that lineage. That group of documents is called the warrior heart record. We have expanded on that record. And so the warrior heart record should be known in 2 parts. The first part is what was handed down to us from our lineage and from what the lineage wanted us to know about our lineage. Then there is a second group of documents which we have since gathered and added because of our historical research. The second part might be, for example, a copy of the Wubeishi, the military treaties that came from the Ming dynasty. And that whole thing now is known as the warrior heart record. Once you've seen a few historical documents, the next thing that will go through your mind is museums. And so you'll rush off to a museum. However, in those days in China, you could see the museum, of course, but the assistance from the curators was 0. That has changed over time. Things have got better, but we had to have access to our own information, and we had to do that by getting our own artifacts and documents. The British museums, for example, were fantastic and of course help a lot. We have had information and assistance from museums, but it's been a little more limited than we would hope. Collectors, however, have been totally different. We've had collectors from all over the world helping us because they are enthusiastic. They want to help. They want to know as much about their collection as they want to help us gather information for our project. So collectors have been fantastic. Regarding hermits, we interacted with hermits from all over the Far East, but of course mainly on the China coast and in the various mountain regions. Hermits are of a great value in certain aspects. Well, of course, there's other researchers from around the world, but those are, we found to be extremely limited. Even Japanese researchers, Korean researchers would put the wall up. There's a tremendous movement to protect the Japaneseness of Japan. The cultural influence was definitely from China, and the researchers put the barriers up. However, we have worked with Japanese, the Chinese, Mongol researchers, Malaysian researchers, Indonesian researchers, so they've been very, very good. From 1992 to 2005, we interviewed a lot of Japanese masters. We tried to stay on the path of masters that were connected to or recognized by the government, or the prefecture at least. And the reason we did that was simply that we had some form of guideline, so that we weren't running on emotion or personal likes or dislike. If the Japanese government of some sort had given the okay, then we would recognize that person and take information from them. Those people were extremely helpful. As always, my gratitude will go to Otake Ritsuke of the Katori Shinto-ryo, because he went beyond the normal to help us. He was extraordinary, and we saw and did things with him that were really unusual. From 1996 to 2005, we interviewed a lot of the masters from dying traditions in and around Southeast Asia. There were hundreds of such masters, and it was sad to watch their traditions dying. Simply, there was just no one to take over. We were able to interview and to gather documentation from these people. We spent around 2 years following the route taken by Zheng He's Ming Dynasty fleet. An extraordinary journey, and the reason was to go to these places that have been isolated, what they call junk stations, that were isolated throughout the centuries. Well, everything was old. The language was old, the customs were old, we found old weapons, we found all sorts of things. And these particular places have been largely just left off the map. We were given access to the Qinwu record, both in Shanghai, which Shanghai was rather limited, but in Singapore and Hong Kong as well. Singapore's record was enormous, and we were allowed to go through a lot of the record and to take copies and to maintain a connection with that record. That's been of extraordinary help. But there is so much to go through. It takes an enormous amount of sifting to get anything of value. I personally took a great interest in the triads and the Yakuza. And the thinking behind that was, who still uses real martial arts today? This led to, obviously, the triads and the Yakuza. And ultimately, we spent many years, you might say the word embedded, in the Yakuza and the triads. We were not part of the triads or the Yakuza, but we were given some quite extraordinary access to their information and to their people who explained a lot to us. And then going on from being inside the triad, so to speak, we also were able to get a lot of information from the Hong Kong police and also the police of Thailand. To outline the results of nearly 4 decades of research is almost impossible. However, there were a few defining factors. The first one was that we did discover the origin of the ninja, and we did go on to practice and hopefully master the Chinese art of stealth. The relationship with China and Japan and all of its martial arts and that of the ninja is really something that should be understood. I'm afraid the West is so far off the mark, it's frightening. We can also see this in the Shaolin arts and the understanding of Shaolin today as compared to what Shaolin used to be, and to understanding why Shaolin is what it is completely lost. And there are so many reasons to that it probably takes several books or several documentaries to even explain it. But all of that has been the results of our research. It really makes a difference. It makes a difference to the physical art in the real world today. It's not just some theory. what happened then really relates to what happens now. And in a nutshell, everything that you see today, all the martial arts you see today, they're nonsense. They are nothing like they used to be in the 70s, and they're certainly not like what they used to be in 1930s. But they are far, far away from what they were in 1850 and beyond that. So all of these things will have to come out through time. And I suppose that's what this is all about, is to present the background to the research first. I think it's fair to say that many of the legends are true. The legends meaning, for example, the power that one can generate with the fist, or how many people can be defeated by a single person. These things are possible, but they are not possible in the way people are looking at the martial arts today. And that is why we have this mess up where the West has moved into MMA, because they can't find the results. If we had done some proper research and proper investigation into the relationship with the history and the martial arts many years ago, many decades ago, we probably would have all still been very, very attached to Oriental martial arts. In my opinion, Oriental martial arts are more attractive and more mystical than even when I began, when I had these fanciful ideas. The truth is so attractive and so interesting. It's just going to take a long time to put it out there.